Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be Venom the Last Dance, number 2 would be Smile 2, number 3 would be Conclave, number 4 would be The Wild Robot, and number 5 would be Terrifier 3. And god damn it, I got so close. I was so incredibly close. We also, one movie swapped out the other one in the top 5, but we also had a tie. So really, I was going to look through the predictions and see like, well, if somebody guessed it this way or that way, they'll still get a shout out since right now it's a tie. But nobody got their predictions right for the other 3 slots. So it's like, okay, whatever. Never mind then. So let's just dive right on into it. Number 1 was, of course, Venom the Last Dance. No one is surprised by that, obviously. I think some people are a little surprised that, you know, compared to the other movies' openings, the first Venom opened to 80 million domestically. Let There Be Carnage, despite 2021 still getting people back to the theater, kind of COVID opening, still open to 90 million. When I mention this next number, I just want to reiterate, I'm not trying to sound any alarms or anything. Also, you know, the trilogy is over, so it's not like it really matters either way. But this movie, despite those 2 larger openings that I just mentioned, this movie only opened to $51 million domestically. Now, worldwide, that opens to a grand worldwide opening of $175 million. Obviously, a much more impressive number, considering the budget is $120 million. That's the initial production budget. They only need about $65 million more to get to that doubling point, so they're all good, especially when you look at how the first Venom grossed, like, I think over 700 or 800 million worldwide, and then Venom Let There Be Carnage at least got over 500 million, so they are, I think, totally in the clear. They're fine. You know what I mean? Sony, at the very least, Sony has been budgeting these films in a very wise, kind of smart way. You could be like me, who complains about how Sony's Spider-Man villain movies, you know, have bad screenplays, or, you know, they feel too rushed, or, you know, blah, 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 blah. But at the very least, they've kept their budgets pretty reasonable. It doesn't always work out for them, obviously, in the case of, like, Morbius and Madam Web, but in the case of the Venom trilogy, you know, it's helped them out really well. And also, I just wanted to point out, like, the differences of the budgets. The first Venom had a budget of 100 million, Let There Be Carnage 110, this one 120. They've only just slightly gone up, instead of just, like, getting really bloated and out of control, which I feel like that should just be normal, you know what I mean, for, like, most blockbuster sequels. I feel like, I mean, especially look at how, like, Ant-Man, you know, they started off in the more modest side of the MCU, but then, you know, theirs got to Quantumania, and it's like 200 million budget, and it's like, wow, it doesn't even really reflect because you've crunched all your visual effects artists and the movie looks like utter shit. So they've been very smart with that. I'm not sure how disappointed the heads at Sony, the executives, whatever, are over this one opening the lowest in the trilogy, but, I mean, they've been promoting how this is the last one. You know, like, if we see this character again, it might be in, like I mentioned in my review, like maybe Spider-Man versus Null, another multiverse movie, kind of thing like that. And maybe, like I also mentioned, if they're so desperate for another hit, maybe they'll try to, you know, milk current nostalgia for Tom Hardy and Venom's interactions. So, you know, doors are always open, you know, you never really know. But, I mean, they've been promoting this as the last one. So I don't think they care necessarily if it doesn't match, you know, the other 2 films as opening weekends. And also, like I've been making the case for, they're already in a good spot just because of their budgeting. For the other Sony Spider-Man villain movies, but they're not villains, the opening weekend is 36 million over Madam Web and 12 million over Morbius, so it's just the other 2 Venom movies that people are, like, kind of disappointed by. It's 29 million below the first one, and then 39 million below Let There Be Carnage. As far as the domestic overall runs, it did already outgross the entirety of Madam Web's domestic run by 8 million, now needs 22 million until it gets to Morbius. And then you jump into the worldwide numbers, it has already outgrossed the entirety of Madam Web's worldwide run by 75 million, and then it's 13 million over the entire worldwide run of Morbius. Needs 326 million until it gets to Let There Be Carnage. So it seems like, even though, you know, you never know how these things can go these days, it just definitely seems like this run, domestic and worldwide, is just destined to be smack dab in the middle of the Sony Spider-Man villain movies. I mean, it's kind of rare that you can, like, see some numbers and kind of get a good idea that's just kind of where it's going to end up being at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Of course, obviously, things can change. Maybe it'll hold over so well next weekend that it'll, you know, catch up to Venom a lot sooner. But, you know, the cinema score was a B-. Critically, you know, Rotten Tomatoes critics' consensus has always been on the negative side. Audiences have loved all 3. The third one has like a 70% last time I checked. So that's where that film is at right now, as far as like audience perception there. But cinema score, B-, that's kind of on the verge of like some people were like maybe feeling a little let down by it, like maybe thought it was an anticlimactic end or something like that. Like, it's not a horrible score, especially since what we've seen with Joker and Megalopolis recently. And some movies, when they get into C territory, that's kind of regarded as like, that's horrible, just in general. So B- is like still clinging for dear life, and it doesn't necessarily represent how people feel about a movie. Like overall, it's just a score. It's like you walk out of the theater, instant kind of reaction. Doesn't really reflect how you maybe feel days later, unless you go back and change that. I don't know. I don't fucking sign up to do that bullshit. I don't know. So we could just be seeing another drop off, not obviously to the same level of like Joker 2, because it seems like people are still positive on this instead of what Joker 2 did. But, you never know, is all I'm trying to get at. At number 2 is Smile 2, and I was wondering how this one was going to hold over just because of Venom, and yeah, it didn't hold over as great as maybe it could have. It had like about a 50 to 60% drop off, which isn't great. But we've talked about how it's already in a pretty good spot last weekend. So it made 9 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 40 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 83 million. So they are only 1 million shy already of tripling that initial production budget of 28 million. So like I said, whether it matches the run of Smile domestically and worldwide, the first one, doesn't matter because their own initial production budget, they're still very much so in the clear. And I feel like the positive reception this movie has been getting just speaks well enough to how, people are fans of this if they wanted to make another one, or if you wanted to give Parker Finn a shot to make an original film again, So I feel like this is still in a good spot. Next weekend, it's going to be interesting because, like, obviously it's Halloween, but it's not really Halloween weekend. Halloween is taking place on a Thursday. So for the days leading up to that, we might see more, bigger booms for horror movies then. But for the overall weekend taking place right after, I'm not so sure. So it could still hold over then, especially with, people maybe having already seen Venom, and they're like, okay, what else is out there? Oh, just the Tom Hanks Here movie? I don't want to see that. Or maybe they do. And maybe they're looking for other options they haven't thought of yet. Overall, we are still good, though, I feel, for this movie, and that's great. Number 3, this is where we get into the tie. Number 3 is Conclave, making $6.5 million. This is on an initial production budget of $20 million, so hopefully, it has a solid enough domestic run overall and a combined worldwide total to bump it up. I feel like there should be some worldwide numbers coming in, it doesn't take place in America, so I feel like that should be able to bump it up. It's also a big Oscar hopeful, so could be down the line when it's nominated for some stuff, they get re-released in theaters and then you make more money there. This is part of the award season waiting game now. We're entering that period of the year. But I don't really have much more to add for this movie other than it was really good. Would highly recommend you checking it out, bumping up those numbers. But then number 4, also making 6.5 million, The Wild Robot. Now, I did do some checking for like other box office articles that are out as of when I checked, when I recorded, prior to recording this. And there was only one article I found that seemed to think that it was going to open to 6.2. So I'm confident to say that I'm still going to list it as 6.5 right now in this video, but for the sake of explaining that this is a tie for most other estimates. But I did find something that seemed like they thought it was going to be under. I mean, even with the fact, that thenumbers.com is listing Conclave first, maybe that's, a sign of a good faith in that movie doing better, or maybe it's just alphabetical. Doesn't matter. Either way, I just want to point out, it's a tie as far as like the initial estimates every other place you look, but I'm confident leaving it in the number 4 spot just based off of that one obscure ass article that I found. Is this a bad explanation? Fuck you. So it made 6.5 million, adding to a domestic total of 111 million. For DreamWorks Animation, it has outgrossed Trolls Band Together by 9 million, Rise of the Guardians by 8 million, Chicken Run by 5 million, and it squeaked over Mr. Peabody and Sherman by a couple 100,000. It's now sitting behind Jerry Seinfeld's B-Movie by $15 million. Hell fucking yes. Worldwide, it is sitting at 232 million. I feel like every time we come back to this, it's a bit more of a significant bump, and that's just so cool. You know what I mean? That's just really cool to me. And similar to how Smile 2 is only 1 million shy of tripling their initial production budget, The Wild Robot is only 2 million shy of tripling their 78 million initial production budget. So yeah, this one is just really growing. Just goes to show you leave movies in theaters long enough, give them time to grow, and then they can really thrive. They'll find their audience. You just never know, I think they really bet on the right thing here to push for a longer run. I'm glad they didn't announce like it's coming to digital like a week after it came out, because it opened all right, but it wasn't like blowing everything out of the water. And I feel like for so many other movies these days, it doesn't have to be animated, just some of the other movies, they're very quick to just go like, all right, fuck it, put it out on digital. Like they announced that Joker 2, I think Joker 2 is like 2 days away now from getting released on digital, which obviously it wasn't doing well before, but that obviously doesn't help it even more. You know what I mean? Oy vey. Oy vey. Anyways, for the worldwide total, though, it did outgross Wallace and Gromit by 35 million, Trolls Band Together by 23, Croods: A New Age by 18 million, Prince of Egypt by 14 million, and Chicken Run by 5 million. It's now sitting behind The Bad Guys by 18 million, which is pretty good considering The Bad Guys is another recent DreamWorks kind of modest hit. And the fact that this one is only a couple million away from outgrossing that one, I mean, that's pretty good, Obviously, just reinforces that they bet on the right horse here, and they're wise to announce that they're going to be developing a sequel, because people want to see that. Obviously, people are discovering the magic of this movie and really, really digging it. Number 5, We Live in Time. So it wasn't Terrifier 3, which was my prediction, but it was We Live in Time, holding over from last weekend. I guess more people figured out that it was in theaters, or maybe it expanded to a couple other places. I'm honestly, because I thought last weekend was the big expansion, or maybe it was this weekend. I'm not sure. Either way, it made 4.8 million. Really no different. Maybe it was a little higher than what it was last weekend. I don't know. But yeah, it made 4.8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 11 million. Worldwide, it's only, bumped up to 12.04. And I'm still not sure what the budget of this thing is, like we were kind of talking about. It's not like this big expensive looking movie, but you do have 2 very popular leading actors, so it could be like maybe budget wise 15-20 million, something like that. So right now, if you want to just go by that as far as like our typical box office rules of like doubling your budget, it's probably not in the best position, this 12.04. But I mean, the fact that about the same amount of people, maybe even a little bit more, came back this weekend to find it if it came to their area, I think that just speaks to some people's interest in this material, seeing these 2 actors, and it could just speak well to how well it's going to do post-theatrical release, like home video markets, just years to come. I don't know what its award season chances are. Like, I feel like on paper, this seems like, oh yeah, give these 2 the nomination, but I mean, there's still some other movies out there. I looked on like goldderby.com recently because I was curious about this, and it was looking like they were not very high up on the like prediction list. So that could obviously change. That isn't a for sure rule. That's just what people think and theorize. So I don't know if this will have like what we were kind of talking about with Conclave, like a re-release with award season stuff, and it'll get more money then because of even more interest, because it's awards worthy now technically. But still, interesting that it bounced back just a tiny little bit. For the director, it is 6 million over Closer Circuit and Goldfinch domestically, needs 27 million till Brooklyn. Worldwide, it is 9 million over Anybody There, 6 million over Closed Circuit, and 3 million over the Goldfinch, sitting behind Brooklyn by 50 million. So Brooklyn is the one to beat. Probably, I don't know, it bounced back a little bit this weekend, but it's not like it was anything massive. I don't know if it'll continue to do so in the coming weeks, so I don't think it will have enough momentum to get to Brooklyn, but, I guess you never know. Number 6 is Terrifier 3, making 4.7 million, adding to a domestic total of 44 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 50 million. So with that, with that 2 million initial production budget, they have made 25 times that now in combined worldwide totals. That is fucking insane to me. Even besting some NC-17s, if I remember reading that headline correctly somewhere. Wow, man, this one is, it's really making a name for itself. I cannot wait to see, how Terrifier 4 will do when they make that maybe 2 years from now, because it seems like a lot of people are now very aware and kind of into seeing what this franchise is all about. So there you go. Hats off to Damien Leone and the whole team. Number 7 is Beetlejuice, making 3 million, adding to a domestic total of 288 million. It is 46 million away from Alice in Wonderland now, so, not looking like it's going to outgross that at this point. Worldwide, it is sitting at 438 million, so it's 37 million away from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So it's looking like these are the movies it's going to stop behind for Tim Burton's filmography, but I mean, shit, Tim Burton really needed like a really solid, great box office win for himself, that critics and audiences at the very least liked, to say the least, instead of like Dumbo, so I'm glad for him in this instance. He had a really great run with this one, even if it is slowing down and kind of slowly dipping its way out of the top 10. But like we were saying, maybe throughout this week, people will be like, we haven't seen Beetlejuice yet. Maybe now's the time, since it's literally spooky season week. Number 8 is Anora. Not in my area yet, so I wasn't really sure if it would get into the top 10. And, the number is not great. I mean, 867,000. I mean, great for the limited theaters that it's in, but as far as like, the other numbers we've been talking about, yeah, I don't think it's in fully wide release yet. So maybe it'll get to my theater soon. I can't wait to see it. But that adds to a domestic total of 1.6 million right now for director Sean Baker. The opening weekend, which was, I think, last week or the week before, despite it being in limited markets, and the same goes for all of his other films as far as the opening weekend, this is still the highest opening weekend ever for him in those limited markets. So that just goes to show how much hype there is post the festival screenings for this movie. For his filmography, it is 1 million over Prince of Broadway, Takeout, Starlet and Tangerine, and it squeaked by Red Rocket by a couple 100,000, needs 4 million until it outgrosses Florida Project. Worldwide, it is sitting at 2.2 million, so that is 2 million over Prince of Broadway, Takeout, Starlet, and Tangerine, and it's 1 million over Red Rocket, needs 9 million until the Florida Project. So obviously, with the fact that this is getting some awards buzz as well, and people were so passionate about seeing it in these limited markets right now, seeing it as soon as possible, before it expands, we're going to be seeing it outgross the Florida Project pretty soon, obviously. But I think just goes to show, as far as like the award season coming up, people have been predicting Anora to be like a big winner, and obviously I feel like that message is taken hold and people are interested to see it, and people might also agree with that, I can't wait to see it myself, so we'll see. Number 9 is Piece by Piece, making $720,110 this weekend. Why did I include the whole number instead of putting in the K? You'll see. But that adds to a domestic total of 8.8 million. It is 51 million behind the Lego Ninjago movie now. Bye, Pharrell. I don't know what else to say. I'm glad that my local theaters have taken down the Lego Pharrell standee, because it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't think anyone gives this much of a shit about it. And that's what I was thinking, like, the whole time. Like, do people really care about Pharrell this much to see not just a biopic about him, but like a Lego movie biopic about him? Turns out, no. Not even the combined strength of Virginia could boost up the box office numbers. Maybe this is all Virginia, you know what I mean? Like, everywhere else, it's like a couple 100,000. Virginia is like the 8.2 or something like that. I don't know. Finally closing out the video, number 10 is Transformers 1, making 720,000. So the estimate is 720,000, and then Piece by Piece has that little extra at the end. So we almost had a bit of another tie, and we might as well have one, actually. It's just now it's for the films in the bottom 10, and they've been around long enough so people don't really care that much. And it's looking like definitively Transformers 1 is going to be a little below Piece by Piece. Either way, that adds to a domestic total of 57 million, places it 70 million away from Bumblebee's domestic run. Worldwide, it is sitting at 124 million, which places it 315 million away from Rise of the Beast. So, yeah, I really, it bumped up a little bit more as the weeks went on, but it was never enough to double that 75 million initial production budget. We're 26 million away from there. I pray that, home video releases, streaming numbers or something. I would like to see more of this, but I feel like, not to be a snob or anything, but I would like to see it like in movie form. It's just kind of a bummer, Paramount once again kind of losing sight of something really special, it seems like, because Dungeons and Dragons, people complain about some of the marketing with that and that they didn't really market it all that well. But that movie was a good hit amongst like audiences and critics. But as far as the actual box office numbers, it fell short of how much money they put into that. And it's frustrating. Release-wise also, they really released that at like the worst time. Mario was like right around the corner. I think John Wick was also too. God, man, they fucked two things now. Dungeons & Dragons and Transformers 1. I think in the case of Transformers, that was already kind of on the way out because Rise of the Beast, it did good, but not like amazing. But they're committing to a Transformers versus G.I. Joe movie, which I don't. Okay, so this is what I don't understand. This is what as far as like the Transformers brand, you would feel like it's done, right? But, they're moving forward with the Transformers G.I. Joe movie that they hinted at the end of Rise of the Beast, even though G.I. Joe, maybe it was profitable once for Rise of Cobra, but I mean, Retaliation obviously didn't match the same thing since they didn't make any more of those. And then Snake Eyes, when they tried to reboot the whole thing, that was a big 2021 COVID flop, and they haven't really been touching it since. It just, for all intents and purposes, it seems like this shouldn't be happening, but it is, and Chris Hemsworth is going to be in talks to star in that one, not voice Optimus Prime, he's just going to be a human in it. I don't get it. Anyways, now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I think will still be Venom the Last Dance. Number 2, I think will be Here, just based off of, like, there's plenty of people who I think want to see Tom Hanks and Robin Wright do their thing. I feel like, you know, the Forrest Gump reunion alone could help that. Not, like, amazing, booming box office numbers, but I think also the trailer is interesting enough for some people to be like, oh, they're trying to do some experimental thing or something. I think it's based on a graphic novel that just had that kind of art style, so now they're just doing it in movie form or something like that. Either way, I think that'll be number 2, and then number 3 I think will be Smile 2, number 4 Conclave, and then number 5 The Wild Robot. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.